we got to talk about James Harden. Jacoby, I asked you an assignment. What did James Harden's next 3 years look like? So we're going from August 23 all the way through July 2026. Walk us through, what teams does he play for? Where does he live? How much money does he make? It's just everything James Harden. What do you have?
Jacoby, can I throw in something real quick?
Absolutely.
He's going to be 34 in 2 weeks.
Copy that.
So birthday's coming up. So I want you to remember
happy birthday, Jimmy. Happy birthday, Jimmy Harden.
And it's like an older 34, like when 50 Cent turned 34. It's like he's 34, but it feels like 39.
Well, let me start by this. Is you also asked, like, if you had to give James Harden advice, what would it be? Because I think that is very important to what the next 3 years look like. Because if James Harden called my phone, and I was like, guys, hold on a second, pause the pod, Kyle. I have to talk to James Harden because he wants my advice. I would strongly suggest that he play basketball well for $35 million for the Philadelphia 76ers. I think that is clearly the only path for him to get what he wants, for him to get paid handsomely to play basketball after this year. If there is any sort of repeating of what he's done in Houston and what he's done in Brooklyn, here in Philadelphia, he's costing himself maybe $100 million. But here's how I predict it will play out. I predict he will show up and play for the Sixers, and he will not give 100%, or he will not give the same effort he gave last year. He will not perform the same numerically, and I believe that he will be traded at the deadline, before the deadline, for 60 or 70 cents on the dollar for some pieces. I don't think that Daryl can really do anything right now that makes them a better team without James Harden. Like, there's no trade out there that makes them better if you trade James Harden.
Yeah, to make the better move is to hope he comes back and is somehow happy.
But if you want me to predict how it plays, he comes back and he is unhappy, so unhappy at which it becomes a situation where you can add by subtracting him from the locker room, and you get 60 cents on the dollar, and then he plays the end of the year for that team, becomes a free agent, and then has his agent sweep the landscape for interested teams and finds out that what's out there for him is $30-40 million in 2 years, maybe with an option.
Yeah, I don't even think that much. Look at what happened to Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook went down to $3.8 million this year. He went from 47 to 3.8. It goes fast.
I don't think I let's not forget the year that James Harden had last year on the basketball court.
Let's not forget the 3 teams he quit on.
He was good. He led the league in assists, and he adapted his game to playing alongside MVP Joel Embiid. They went on streaks during the regular season that he had a lot to do with, and they looked like a good basketball team. And even the Celtics series, like, we all remember that game 1. Like,
sure. I also remember game 6, game 7.
I think the off-court stuff with James Harden has sort of has muddied our vision, blurred our vision about what the on-court stuff is.
With reason.
I still think he has value, but I think it plays out like this. He gets traded before the deadline. He plays for a team, whether it's the Clippers or not, for the rest of the season. He does not re-sign with them. He becomes a free agent and gets like $30 million for 2 years. That if you want, and I don't know what team that is, but it's going to be not that sexy.
The team doesn't exist. It's a team in fantasy land. Wilds, what do you think?
Right. That's how I see it.
Do you want to hear a ridiculous idea or a serious analysis?
Let's go serious first, and then we'll go ridiculous.
I think that he would be doing a disservice to Embiid, who he seems to have a real relationship with, if he shows up and doesn't give 100%. So I think if he does show up, he's going to play. But the Daryl Morey is a liar stuff is not great. And if there's any sort of like this kind of rumors that there was a handshake deal, a wink deal that like, hey, take this pay cut and I'll get you later. Turns out I'm not going to get you later. He has a right to be upset. And I saw Woj is reporting they're kind of looking into salary cap circumvention if that actually happened. They already did what? Looked into it?
I already debunked this on Twitter.
Oh,
he thought he was going to Houston.
Sorry.
I did it like 4 days ago. He thought he was going to Houston.
Yeah, and
And then
Ime
Udoka got there first.
All the reporting, there was ESPN Woj on Christmas Day reported it. In March, there was this big athletic story about what the bond between Houston and Harden. And then in May, same thing. Houston, that's where Philly thought he was going, and they didn't feel like he had any loyalty to them. My question is, if he felt like he was promised this wink contract from Philly, then why was all the Houston shit being reported for 6 months? What really happened is Udoka came in. He got the job at the end of April. And they were like, what about James Harden? I was like, yeah, we could talk about it. And then as soon as he got the job, he was like, I don't fucking want that guy. And he threw his body in front of it. And they went from Harden to Fred VanVleet. That's what happened. Harden thought he was going there. He thought he was getting a big contract. That's why he took a little less money to help them Philly win for 1 year, because he knew he was probably going to leave. That's my theory, and I think I'm right. Well, and I think once that Houston thing got pulled out, and Daryl says to him, all right, we're going to trade. Yeah, we'll trade you this summer. And then he looks around, and nobody fucking wants James Harden. Like, sorry. Clippers wouldn't even offer Terrence Mann for him. And then go through the league. Who has space for a guy making $35 million? Like, if you're Miami, would you trade Tyler Hero for him? No way. You're not doing that. Just go through the league. Try to find me the James Harden trade. All of a sudden, you're looking at Charlotte with Gordon Hayward and a protected number one. Why would Charlotte do that? Why would Washington trade Jordan Poole for him? Like, go through every team. There's no James Harden trade. Philly knows it. They've told him that. And whether he fully realizes that or not, I don't know. I mean, he's always had a weird kind of circle situation. Like, Pelinka left a while ago, and he's had no agent. He's gotten help from different agents. He always seems like he has a shifting team. It just seems like he's getting bad advice.
I agree with that. Do you think, going back to what I was saying about player narratives, if I was to come in and I was like, hey, James, here's the thing. The narrative around you is that you're the highest usage rate guy in the league who scored 36 points a game, 34 points, led the league in scoring, all that, draw the fouls, do the whole thing. You're not that guy anymore. You're actually a super unselfish guy who has brought his scoring down to 21 points a game, who took a $14 million pay cut, who led the league in assists and bought your buddy a Rolex when he won MVP. So all you have to do is somehow spin the quitting on the third team to sort of cement this new narrative that you're actually an unselfish player. That is the narrative is that you're the most selfish player. The quitting on the team certainly doesn't help, but he needs to spin it. Someone needs to go out there and spin that for him.
All right, so
playing
Jacoby,
unselfish, and he took $14 million. Look, he just say, "Oh, he took $14 million pay cut." Oh, sure, that's no big deal. Aaron Rodgers did it, and there was a 7-day parade. James Harden did it, like, "Oh, that was good." Well, sure, that's nice.
He took the pay cut, and then they hired his friends, Tucker, Trez, and Daniel House, and then they got docked for tampering for a couple of picks.
And they went through all their emails and everything. So that's why there's another investigation. Also, like, see, nobody remembers this, but Minnesota lost 5 first-round picks when they did a wink-wink thing with Joe Smith. Like, the league's really harsh on that thing. You'd have to be crazy to do that in 2023, especially with all the different ways they can keep receipts on things. And I just think it's too risky for Philly. Jacobs, if Harden comes to me right now and he says, I like your podcast. I don't really like anybody around me in my life. What should I do? I would do exactly what you laid out. Go back to Philly. You know what?
Play great.
Just apologize. Just look at the big picture. You're under contract there anyway that you opted in on. That's the other thing. He fucking opted into the contract. So
because he couldn't get another one.
Right. So you opted in. That was your decision. Look at the landscape. Boston, if this Porzingis, God only knows what's going on, but there's a chance Boston's going to be worse. There's a chance Miami, who lost Gabe Vincent, they lost Strus, and they might not get Dame Lillard, and they're older. They might be worse. Milwaukee is a rookie coach. You just going down the line, it's like, you guys might actually be the 1 seed if you just come back with Nick Nurse and you're happy. Like, I actually think they could be the 1 seed, but he could also torpedo it and it could be a disaster. But what is the better situation for him? You're going to go to Clippers and play with load management Kawhi? You're going to play with this goofy Clipper team that's never done jack shit. That's a better situation than playing in Philly with Embiid and Nick Nurse. I don't get it. I think it's really weird. It's weird that he doesn't see that it's the best situation, which makes me not trust him as like a basketball entity. Where does he want to win a title? I don't even know. Because if he wants to win a title, stay in Philly.
Well, it's not even
like I'm
winning
doing
a title.
Daryl's dirty work, but I'm not. I just think it's common sense.
It's not wanting to win a title. Let's say that he just wants to maximize his earnings over the next 3 years. The number one choice to do so is to play good basketball for the Philadelphia 76ers this season. And there's a huge gap before you get to number 2. A huge gap. So it's like, even if it's not about winning a title, which is like, as fans, it's what we want players to care about the most. Let's say that he's like, I'm trying to get as much money because I see the twilight of my career. There is only one real option there, and that is to play good, hard basketball for Philadelphia. And if you're Philadelphia, there's a whole Embiid thing because this is getting messy. And you have to save there's the whole Embiid angle. Like there's a lot of damage control that you have to do with Joel Embiid when James Harden's talking to 15-year-old Chinese kids about Daryl Morey. What was the question that was asked that led to that statement? Was someone in the crowd like, how do you feel about Daryl Morey?
Yeah,
it was also kind of fucked up because that Daryl's not exactly Beyonce in China.
No,
and it just felt a little intentional. And before, I don't want to sound like I'm defending Daryl because I think his infatuation with Harden is going to end up, really damaging like the big picture of his career. Like the fact that over and over again, he just getting sucked in by this guy. And, like the Ben Simmons piece where Indiana offered Sabonis. Sabonis got turned into Halliburton and Hield, which makes me think it's pretty fair to say that they could have turned Ben Simmons into Halliburton and Hield, which is a way better basketball trade, but they just really wanted Harden. And he vouched for the guy and now blow up in his face. And he wanted to bring in a guy that had quit on 2 teams, which is on him.
At what point, Bill, do you think Embiid, who seems to love Philly with all his heart, says, you know what? I had Ben Simmons. You told me it was going to work. And then he left. Was playing with Jimmy Butler. And he left. And I had James Harden, and you guys screwed that up. And granted, it was different regimes screwing it up.
Yeah.
I'm kind of done with this. I don't know if he's ever going to get to that point because it feels like he's really in the fabric of Philadelphia at this point. I think it'd be shocking if he left. But I think if it was happening to somebody else somewhere else, he would be the first one to ask out. He would be the superstar to ask out this year.
You know what I would say to him if he said all that stuff to me? Play good in the playoff series.
My knee hurt.
I got hit in the face.
Just kick ass for 4 straight weeks in April and May.
I was trying to get
a broken face. I had a broken face.
I'm not saying you can't do it. Just do it once.
My face
was he awesome in the Boston series? What's the excuse for that?
My knee
seemed
hurt.
Pretty healthy.
Bad matchup.
Bad matchup.
It's the MVP. Bad matchup.
I think
Tatum killed us. Tatum just went on fire. Who could guard him?
Yeah, what do you want me to do?
Hey,
I wouldn't bet on this, but I think there's a 10-1 chance. 20-1. But I could see Harden in China next year not getting anything. No, I'm serious.
I think it's
not getting anything close to where he thought he was going to get money-wise from the NBA and just saying, I'll go to China, I'll take a huge check from them, and then maybe February, March, I'll come back and I could play NBA and get and basically double dip. Because Jacoby thought he was like 2 for 40. I don't see it. The only reason Kyrie got that money is because Dallas was already kind of pot committed to that terrible trade they made, and they had no choice. What are you going to do? You have to keep Luka. The Kyrie was some form of asset, and you just got to keep your fingers crossed and hope it works out. But if they hadn't done that, who's doing it?
To clarify, if he plays well this year, he's 2 for 30 or 40 when he's a free agent. That's
okay.
So you're saying
that's in the hypothetical in which. What I'm saying, in the hypothetical scenario in which he plays well for Philly this year and then leaves Philadelphia, that's the type of deal I would expect him to get.
That really makes me nervous.